Good morning once again, everybody. You are back in the DFSArmy.com NHL Breakaway Slate Breakdown. This is the fastest breakdown you've ever seen before in your life. I've got about 15 minutes to get a 12-game slate broken down. So we're going to video format. You can follow me at Chapadong on Twitter and also in our VIP Slack forums, where if you use the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, you get a 20% discount. That drops our membership price all the way to $20 a month, and it is perhaps the best all-sport inclusive DFS coverage you can receive for $20 a month. I wouldn't be saying it otherwise. I wouldn't be here otherwise. I'm telling you, the Domination Station Optimizer is absolutely on fire. It produced NASCAR winners, PGA winners. We've had 5-figure winners in NASCAR just this week. We produce basketball winners on a nightly basis. If you follow me on Twitter, you see me tweet out those lineups on quite frequent occasions. So if you're considering a community of players that think like you do, that play like you do, or you're a player that wants to get better at any level that you already exist on, we have coaches, we have help, we have content and everything to get you to the next level, whatever level that is that you are trying to achieve. DFSArmy.com, use the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, and follow the link, I guess, in the description down below or the comments down below. Look forward to seeing you as part of the Army. Let's jump in. That was 90 seconds burned, so I've got, 13 and a half minutes to get this baby done. Washington and New York first off the slate. To be honest with you, not really thrilled about this game. It's not one of the better ones on the entire slate. It's a good one. Both teams are 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. And to be quite honest with you, how can you go against Braden Holtby as a goalie? He's only lost one of his last 13 games. But I don't see this as being as advantageous as other games on the slate. You got a couple of teams that can kind of go up and down. Obviously, Washington's a very powerful offense. You can certainly look for value and one-offs within this offense, but I'm not stacking it up. If you jump over to the second game, Boston and Arizona, I'm very high on Boston tonight. Not so high on Tuukka Rask. I guess you could be, but with the 291 favorite, the money line. But I'm more interested in the Boston Skaters. These guys are 9-1 versus Arizona the last 10 times these teams have met, and Boston right now is 7-3 in their last 10. So they're obviously playing well, and they're playing a team they've historically dominated. That's a good sign. They shoot the puck. They're the second highest scoring team in terms of fantasy points over the last 4 weeks, and honestly, Arizona has given up the third most. So we've got a great offense going up against a soft defense. A team that scores points versus a team that allows points. And that's typically what we're looking for when we play fantasy sports. So I would be all over that Boston offense tonight in either cash or GPP formats. If I scroll down a little bit, we get to another game here that's a little bit sneaky. Colorado goes to Philadelphia. Philadelphia carries a minus 215 line, which is a little surprising, being that Philly's not some juggernaut themselves. It's really more an indictment on how bad Colorado is than anything. And Colorado hasn't been as bad over the last 4 weeks as you would think. So this game might be a little interesting for that. That 215 feels a little bit strong. Although I would take a player like a Wayne Simmons or somebody who's been scoring like a machine lately, is on a pace that's virtually unsustainable, but yet he kind of keeps adding to the goals. He would be definitely somebody I would look at. Not really interested in going contrarian with this one in Colorado, being that they're on the road. A lot of times I don't mind taking, a McKinnon, Landeskog, somebody like that off that team to kind of give me a little bit of a unique twist to my lineups and GPPs, but I'm largely avoiding this game outside of maybe a one-off here or there. If I jump over to Nashville and Buffalo, Nashville has won its last 3 games, and Buffalo has lost their last 3 games, so you're catching a hot team on a cold team. We know that Buffalo has given up the most shots on goal in the league, so we should suspect that Nashville is going to be pumping some pucks on net. And on top of that, Nashville has scored the 8th most points in the league fantasy-wise, and Buffalo has given up the 10th most. So you've got yourself a decent offense going up against a decently bad defense for fantasy purposes. So it's another one of those games where I would consider Nashville more of a secondary offense tonight instead of a primary offense, a primary target. If we scroll down a little bit, Columbus and Montreal, secondary offense, Columbus, okay. Montreal's just been bad lately. I know they scored the last game out. They've been showing little bits of signs of life, but there hadn't been a lot of consistency there. And in a game that's as volatile as hockey, I'm not into volatility. When I can find consistency, I try to stick with that. I think that Columbus is going to be a little bit more of a consistent producer tonight when it comes to fantasy. I don't really know what I'm getting out of Montreal. You're a big Habs fan and you want to put them in some GPPs, go for it, man. It's not going to, you got nothing to lose there. But if you're playing more cash games and stuff, I'd avoid them until they prove that they're a little bit more consistent. Pacioretty's not bad. And honestly, Markov's been scoring a little bit, but the rest of them are really kind of hit and miss. And, Pacioretty's pretty darn expensive for a guy. If he puts up 1 or 2 DK fantasy points, you're kind of hurting. So jump over to Carolina and Florida. A little bit stronger game. Florida's lost 3 in a row. They came off that good 5-game road trip and have proceeded to lose their last 3 games. And that puts a little bit of a damper on a lot of their numbers and turns this into a pretty mediocre game. I'm waiting for Carolina to come back. They haven't really shown a lot of signs of life lately either, so I'm largely just off this game completely. Scroll down, Edmonton and St. Louis. We don't know what we're getting out of these guys. St. Louis just traded Shattenkirk. We don't really know how the lines are going to shake up. Shattenkirk put a lot of pucks on net. He quarterbacked the power play, which was St. Louis's strength. And Edmonton, on the other side, you would think, oh my God, they're going to stomp St. Louis. They might not. We don't know how this team's going to respond over here. They might pick each other up and say, okay, now that news is over, we've been hanging over our heads for a couple of months. Now we can get back to business and we can really fire this thing up. Edmonton is coming off of their own 6-game road trip. This is the last game on the road trip, and I think they've played some 12 games in 15 nights or 16 nights, something crazy. 12 of their last 14, 16 games have been on the road. There's some really crazy stat out there that suggests that Edmonton's been on the road for a long time, has played a lot of games in a short period of time, and might be really freaking exhausted. So if you get an exhausted team going up against a team that's got a little bit of fire in their belly, there's a GPP line for you. But if you look at it on paper, you got a team that lost one of their best players, their heart and soul of their power play, and a team coming in that isn't a terrible offense. So I don't really know which way this game's going to go. I'm not going to play much of it. I'm from St. Louis. I'm a little biased, I'm sure. But those are the 2 storylines I see playing out. And since they conflict against each other, I don't really know which one is going to happen. If I jump over to Minnesota and Winnipeg here, Minnesota's more of a secondary offense tonight. They pump a lot of pucks on net. They're a top 10 shooting team. Winnipeg is a top 10 team in terms of giving up shots on goal or letting them get to their goalie. So you've got some activity there. Now, in the last 4 weeks, Minnesota has scored. They're a very high-powered offense. They've scored the 3rd most fantasy points. Winnipeg has given up the 4th most. So this is a game a lot like Boston in that you've got a high-powered offense going against a softer defense. But I would consider these guys a little bit more of a GPP situation. Here's why. Minnesota's coming off their back-to-back. Minnesota has a case of the mumps. I mean, who doesn't get vaccinated for MMR against the mumps these days? But they've got a case of mumps going through their team. They could be tired. They could be exhausted. But then again, last night they beat LA 5-4. So again, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this. I don't mind if you want to take shots on these guys. I really don't. I don't mind if you want to go counterintuitive and take some Winnipeg Jets tonight. I really don't. But to me, this is more of a secondary game, especially until a line comes out. If a line comes out that says, Minnesota minus 125 and gives it an over-under of a 6, well, I'm going to change my game plan, and I'm coming right back into this game. I trust Vegas a little bit more than I trust myself sometimes. Here's the second game that I'm going to watch tonight. Pittsburgh going up against Dallas. Pittsburgh is another, we know they score. They score the most goals in the league. They're with a 3.48 goals against average on the season, something crazy like that, ranks tops in the league. And we know that with Crosby and Malkin and these guys, we know what we're getting with these guys. We go up against the Dallas Stars, and Dallas has been a relatively soft defense over the past, 4 weeks or so. They've allowed the most fantasy points to any team in the league, and that's what we want to see Pittsburgh go up against. Stack them up, both formats. They've got the over-under of a 6. They've got Vegas' support. If you look at Dallas scores some points on their own. They're kind of an up-and-down team themselves in that they run north and south. They like to shoot the puck. They like, they can score some points. They've lost a couple of players due to the trade deadline. They're obviously sellers. But this is a game where Pittsburgh has been good defensively lately, but on the season, Pittsburgh has not been a great defensive team. Pittsburgh tends to focus more on their offense, and they allow a good many points and shots coming back at them. So if you want to predict a shootout, you might take a couple of Dallas Stars. I'd temper my expectations. I'd focus more on the Pittsburgh side, but that's just me. If you look down at the next game, LA Kings and the Calgary Flames, Calgary's a little bit more of a secondary offense, but they're getting my heart back. Calgary has been a potent offense at points this season. They went through a slump much like Montreal's going through now, but the last 4 games they've won outright. They're scoring goals again. Dig into some of these guys, Monahan, Backlund, a couple of these guys down in here, your Hamiltons, your Brodies, guys that are on the power play. These guys are not terrible plays. I don't know how many of them I would stack up at this point, but I'd go through some game logs and I would look at who's producing right now. Last 3 or 4 games, who's been producing? And now I might roll with the hot hand. LA is a weird team in that they're very defensive minded, but they have not been playing that well lately. They have not been scoring a ton of goals themselves lately on a 12-game slate. They're not a target for me. But Calgary, need more coffee. Calgary might be, just because of how hot they've been playing lately. So secondary offense there. Detroit and Vancouver, yuck. Fade the whole damn thing. Just move on. This game sucks. If you really want to take Detroit in a GPP type of scenario, you certainly can. It looks like Vancouver kind of tends to give up some points, and Detroit's going to be fairly cheap. So, but the 5 over under, it's not a game I would be playing in cash. It's one I would save for GPPs, bigger GPPs, and hope I hit the right scoring and the right line, and then go into Boston and Pittsburgh elsewhere to round out the rest of my game and use this for my differentiation, and then hopefully pop something decent tonight. But again, it's a relative long shot, so I'd save it for your bigger tournaments. Jump over here, Toronto, San Jose. San Jose is actually, this game has potential shootout on both sides, only because we look at the shots on goal. We've got Toronto, who shoots the most over the last 4 weeks, but also gives up the 4th most shots on goal. That bodes well for San Jose. When you look at points, Toronto scores the 9th most fantasy points over the last 4 weeks. Toronto gives up the 2nd most. So again, you've got Toronto that scores points and gives them up. So basically, Toronto is somewhat matchup proof. When they go up against a team that's not elite defensively, they can score, and they will. However, they allow a ton of points, so their opponent also gets a bump. Both of these teams are fine in either format. If I had to, I'd focus on San Jose, and I would take them as probably my 3rd rated offense. So if we want to go through really quick, my top rated offense tonight is going to be Boston. No doubt about it. Pittsburgh's probably 2nd. Sorry to make you dizzy there. Pittsburgh's probably 2nd going up against Dallas. San Jose is probably 3rd going up against Toronto. If I had to lean into some secondary offenses, I'd probably go up to Nashville facing Buffalo and take Nashville. I'd probably be looking more at Columbus going up against Montreal, and Minnesota going up against Winnipeg would be my secondaries, and then probably Toronto and maybe Dallas. That's really about it. There's not much else to tell you. You guys want player picks and stuff, you need to become a VIP. You need to jump into our Slack channels. You need to talk with us about who we see and what we see. There's not a lot of time to go through that format. I'm going to point you, in a volatile game like hockey, I'm going to point you to the correct offenses, the correct teams to focus on tonight that are in the best spots, tell you a little bit of why they're in the best spots, and then you've got to turn you loose, and you've got to be able to make these own picks yourself. Dig into these game logs. Look at who scores the most points over a 4-week period. Try and cram as many of these guys on your team. Look for cheap guys, 6.2K. Scroll down a little bit, scroll down a little bit, scroll down a little bit. 5.4, 5.4, 5.6. Start looking at these guys. These are your value plays. Start looking even deeper if you can find one on the way down the list a little bit. Start looking at 4.9. Start 11 points in his last 10 games. It makes him a value play, guys. He's going to get you some points. He's going to put a few shots on goal. He obviously plays on the power play to a certain degree, and he's logging minutes, and he's under 5K. That's a value play. And Boston's one of our targeted offenses tonight. Hello. It's things like this that separate you. 4.8K, 4.6K on a hot team. I'm not into Domi. Colorado, not into him. But if you had to as a one-off to free up some salary, you can't. Rantanen isn't terrible. 10 points in his last, 13 games. He's going to get you a few points tonight. He's got a floor. For 3.9K, he's not the worst guy to toss in there. This is how you pick up some of these guys. This is how you score in fantasy hockey. You get the right mix, boom, you score really, really well. But you build a floor like this by taking some value plays and surrounding yourself with the better offenses on the slate. That's how you win your cash games. Anyway, dfsarmy.com. Join us. We'd love to have you. We'll see you tomorrow, guys.